again, thank you, Professor Jason Borges. Next, we call on Attorney Manjares to please come on stage. So we are opening the floor for questions, about 2 to 3 questions from the audience. Who would like to start? Any questions from our audience? Don't be shy. Mahihain for questions. Yes. Okay.
Excuse me.
Hello. Hi, Justin. Hello, Jason. I was very interested in your forecast of future subjects that could be offered by the law curriculum now. But then again, I was thinking from a very practical viewpoint, how will we be able to understand what to teach when we don't understand it in the first place? Like you were talking about stuff like, what is this thing, iBots or whatever. So, like, I come from another generation. We didn't have computers. I was doing our legal research on typewriter. So, and faculty members of my age would have difficulty understanding like subjects for the future. How do you now suggest that we bridge the gap for us educators of my particular age?
Okay, thank you for your question, Dean. Actually, that's one of the core discussions at the recent EduTech conference in Singapore, precisely because of the digital divide and the cognizance that educators are of a different generation from the ones that they teach. So there's actually a distinction between education and learning. Education is an imposition of knowledge, so from professors to their students. We go away from that paradigm and move on to learning, two-way learning between students and professors. So professors can learn from their students and vice versa. So there's actually a case study with Saito University College in Malaysia. It's an award-winning university in Malaysia. During the pandemic, this is the same talk that said the digital shift was traumatic. During the pandemic, their professors found it incredibly difficult to shift to online because most of their faculty were technologically challenged, to say the least. They knew the what to teach, but they didn't know the how to teach. So to bridge that gap, they actually tapped the most important stakeholder in the course design, the students themselves. So the students became the course designers. So with the students becoming the course designers, there was more of a sense of ownership in the program. Student performance increased because they knew how. They knew the method in which they were being taught, and they were masters of these technologies. In turn, the professors would slowly learn these technologies through assimilation because they would get more and more familiar with them. So, to answer your question, ma'am, it's more of two-way learning. Of course, there's always research, self-study, being exposed to these technologies. But apart from self-study and, to pursue the individual pursuit to continuously become better, we must also recognize that professors and, let's say, lawyers of a different generation can learn from younger lawyers, younger human beings in general. So, again, that's where my point on physical spaces comes in. Human interaction breeds learning. So as these technologies become more commonplace, then the familiarity and understanding of these technologies become mainstream. I mean, again, 10 years ago, e-wallets like GCash and PayMaya were unheard of. But now you have your regular sari-sari store people who know how to use GCash and PayMaya. So it's the same thing, I would presume.
Can I just ask from here?
I was listening to both, and I was thinking it seems to be two sides of a coin, because one is talking about the future in terms of technology, and another one is talking about looking at the past experiences of the respondents and then how do we now prepare for the future. And one of the responses that struck me was the answer of the respondents saying that professors lack the actual skills and experience, which would only be picked up when one has been practicing, right? And yet at the same time, here we have technology setting the pace for society, and law school, being challenged to keep up with it. And I throw this question to the two of you, or perhaps even if some deans here would like to share their insights or plans. Would it be possible for law schools to actually eventually adopt, let's say, a team teaching approach, like a seasoned law practitioner and a very young totoy professor like you, I suppose, coming together, whether as a pair or even get one more person, and then team teach a subject so that law schools are actually able to meet that challenge and at the same time the expectation of students, whether that's a possible future scenario in law schools.
Definitely, ma'am. Personally, when I was in second year in Ateneo, I was taught international in a team approach, actually. We had a teaching assistant who was younger, and my international law professor was, well, still young, but more elderly, to say the least. Our main professor, of course, would teach us the content, but in helping us understand the more intricate details of international law, especially as how it relates to our current world, the current setup of society, that's where the perspective of the younger professor comes in. So I don't think it's far-fetched, ma'am. I think it's more of whether the professors are willing to collaborate to do so. Because, well, unfortunately, I'm not generalizing, but some professors may be teaching for their own ego. So they would want it my way or the highway. But if we were to be more collaborative, in a sense that what we want is what's best for the students no matter what, then again, we add tools to our toolbox, and team teaching can be one of those tools.
I'd like to add also to that, no? And of course, I fully agree with Gian that it can. I think it can be done. As in fact, I think it's already being done. I experienced attending one online class on intellectual property. The one who's facilitating the class is a seasoned lawyer, well known in the field of intellectual property. Right? He's the one giving the perspective based on experience and based on his expertise as an intellectual property lawyer. But the one who's facilitating the synchronous class session is a younger class facilitator, a younger lawyer, right? Who can provide the other side of the perspective concerning emerging trends on intellectual property. So, issues like yung mga NFTs and similar matters. No? He's the one providing for the background, what is it, how it's used, okay? And then what are the possible questions that may arise from this particular setting that are emerging right now. And then the more senior lawyer is the one is going to provide the experienced perspective of how the matter should be resolved. So that's how they do it. And I think it's good, no, that there should really be collaboration. No? Kasi I don't think it would be right for anyone, either one, no? Whether it's the senior lawyer or the junior lawyer, who would say that you should listen to me because I know this. Right? We don't have a monopoly of learning, and so the more perspectives are set in, I think the better it is for us learners. Ganon.
Okay, good afternoon. Actually, my question is is the Philippines ready to adopt the digital world? Because earlier, when we were taking our snacks, our merienda, we have talked about the Philippines, how slow the internet connection is. And one thing that caught my attention in the talk of the very young Banyero of ours is that when he talked about the prosecution of criminal offenses, especially the estafa thing, because personally, I have a friend that been a victim of this, of course, fraud when her credit card was being used, and I think about 30,000 was being, being deducted or what's this, being taken from her. And of course, as a prosecutor, it is very hard for us to prosecute those cases, considering that we don't know who are the perpetrators, right? So, admittedly, in the Philippines, we're just, of course, we can file a cyber libel. That's our level for now. We can identify who are the perpetrators. But for those who do the phishing, the vishing, we don't have the technology to identify the perpetrator. So that's my question. Are we ready to be in that digital world, the Philippines specifically? Thank you.
Okay. I think there are several facets when we say, are we ready? Because we can ask, are we ready in terms of technological literacy? Because most of people who fall victims to online scams, online frauds, are those who don't necessarily understand how technology works. Most people who are immune to these know what the modus operandi are, so they know how to protect themselves. But those who are easily gullible are those who aren't necessarily familiar with the technology, but they're exposed to them already. The fact that GCash is already very much prevalent. But again, a lot of these accounts are unverified, shows that most of the population, while they know the very concept of GCash, they don't know how to use it to its fullest extent. And they don't know how to protect themselves because they don't necessarily understand the technology to its fullest extent. The other side of the coin is regulatory framework. Because of new industries like fintech, financial technology, the law is struggling to keep up in a sense. It's still in its nascency in terms of regulation because, let's say e-wallets in particular. While the BSP provides for certain minimum requirements, are those minimum requirements enough? So we ask ourselves, are we ready in that regard? So are we ready in our regulatory frameworks? Are we ready in terms of technological literacy? But it's not a matter of whether we can dictate the pace. The pace is already there. We have to keep up no matter what. So the solutions that we devise in solving those problems depend on how we approach them. Because we approach them either piecemeal, as the problems come up, or we find holistic solutions. But again, we're finding it difficult to find those solutions precisely because we lack lawyers, we lack lawyer legislators who fully comprehend the digital world around them. So again, how can we prepare the country in dealing with that? So I think it starts with education, not just for lawyers, but for everyone in general. We start with technological literacy, I would think.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rocky, and I come from Baler. So I'm the Dean of Ascot Law. And as some of you guys would know, Baler is on the other side of Sierra Madre. And if there's a Pacific typhoon from the Pacific, we're the first one to be hit. So what I'm trying to say is, coming from that perspective, actually I would like to challenge or not exactly challenge, but give a different perspective as to the internet connectivity issues that has been raised since this morning. No disrespect to our panelists and speakers who have brought up that issue, but coming from the perspective of someone from Aurora and as someone who is teaching in 6 law schools, and my students come from a very diverse set of demographics, from their social status, their work for working students. I would like to say that I've never had a student drop out of class altogether just because of internet connectivity. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that I think, yes, there is an internet connectivity issue in the Philippines, but it is not to an extent that would entirely hinder us from doing digital or doing online classes. Now, at the very start of the semester, I always challenge my students. Yes, you may encounter some internet connectivity issues, but that should not always be the case. For example, in your house, definitely you know which part of your house has the strongest signal, whether it be in the bedroom, the kitchen, maybe even the CR, right? And what's the proof of this? All my students in all 6 schools, they have Facebook accounts. They are very active on Messenger. So I tell them, please, hello. So, I mean, it kind of removes the connectivity issues if they can do their Facebook. Like what Professor, what one of the professors earlier mentioned, no? Maybe when she calls on her student, then suddenly the student will drop out of Zoom, no? So that presupposes that the student had internet connection up until that point that the student was called, and then suddenly it's brown out, right? So, but what I'm trying to say is that from the very start of the semester, I always call out my students that, yes, internet connectivity issues would be unavoidable throughout the semester, but for the 16 weeks duration of the semester, it's impossible that you will have connection issues for all of the 16 weeks, right? So that's my take on that's my different take on the internet connectivity issues. And also one more thing, I have been teaching pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and even now. And what I have to say is, yeah, aside from the fact that I've never had any student drop out of class, actually, I've removed attendance as a requirement from all my classes. And even myself, I'm surprised and that the attendance in all my classes never dipped. But I trust my students that they want to learn. They will attend my classes even if they are not required to attend. And again, no internet connectivity issues was ever used as an excuse or as a reason to drop out of class altogether. So, thank you.
I think the cat agrees. Meow meow. Okay. So this is. I think we can end with this. This is a question from Zoom. So Attorney Emmanuel Valencia asked, "May we please be provided with copies of the data/statistics from Professor Bardes' study and presentation? I believe this information could be helpful in planning what to cover in our designated subjects going forward." So, Professor, do you agree? Sure daw. So, Attorney Emmanuel, that's a yes. Okay, so that ends our keynote speakers. So, again, thank you to Attorney Manjares and Professor Bardes for your insights. And now, I will turn it over to Attorney Tanya for a recap and overview of day one. So please don't go yet. We still have a wellness time for all of you.